There's so much buzz these days about company culture and work-life balance, right? But what actually happens when that culture is put to the absolute ultimate test? Today, we're unpacking a remarkable viral story that challenges literally everything we know about corporate loyalty, workplace empathy, and the modern bottom line. It's a sequence of events that recently caught fire on social media, detailing an extraordinary, deeply human interaction between an employer and an employee who was in absolute crisis. So think about this ultimate dilemma for a second. We're all used to talking about juggling responsibilities, trying to balance our time between home and the office. But this wasn't about missing a late afternoon meeting to make it to a kid's soccer game. No, this was an accountant facing a crisis so profound that balancing a career and family simply wasn't on the table anymore. It was a scenario where the devastating demands of life completely eclipsed everything else, forcing a desperate and truly agonizing choice. Our story kicks off about 2 months ago with an accountant who had given a solid decade of loyal service to his company. I mean, imagine 10 full years of crunching numbers, meeting high-pressure deadlines, and just being a reliable, steady pillar of the office. Then, completely out of nowhere, he approaches his employer, a man identified online as Ankit Pandey, with a formal request to resign. When someone with that kind of tenure just decides to walk away, you know for sure there's a major reason behind it. Pandey, naturally, had to ask why.
And the response he got was just devastating. With tears in his eyes, the employee explained, "My son's condition is very serious. Doctors have given very little hope for his recovery. I want to spend all my time with him." Just let the absolute gravity of that moment sink in for a second. There is no corporate manual for how to handle a situation like this. The employee was completely surrendering his livelihood, his income, his entire career, simply because his child was fighting for his life.
Pandey's immediate instinct was to try and accommodate the crisis. He offered what we often view as the gold standard of corporate flexibility, remote work. He asked, "Can you manage your work from home?" And it makes sense, right? It's a highly pragmatic attempt to keep the employee on the payroll, keep his career intact, while still allowing him to be physically close to his family. It's exactly what most well-intentioned modern managers are trained to offer when an employee hits a personal hurdle. But in a true existential crisis, even logging in from the living room couch is impossible. The employee heartbreakingly declined, because when a doctor tells you there is very little hope for your child, spreadsheets don't matter. Emails do not matter. The employee knew his son required 100% of his physical and emotional presence. He couldn't afford a single distraction, not even a remote one. Faced with this agonizing reality, Pandey makes an incredible pivot. He flat out refuses to accept the resignation. Instead, he tells him, "Go be with your son. Your position here will remain vacant for you." At this point, Pandey is already going way above and beyond standard corporate protocol. He instantly removed the anxiety of job hunting from a father who was already carrying the heaviest burden imaginable. But as he reflected on it, Pandey realized something crucial. Simply preserving a job title wasn't really enough to repay 10 years of faithful service. A decade of loyalty means you don't let your people face their darkest battles alone. Because think about it, if the employee isn't working, he isn't getting paid. And how on earth can a father truly focus on his critically ill child if he's simultaneously quietly terrified about how he's going to afford rent, groceries, or the rapidly mounting medical bills? So Pandey went a step further, making an unbelievable counter-offer that ultimately made this entire story go mega viral. He granted the accountant an open-ended, fully paid leave of absence. He literally told him, "Don't worry about money. Your salary will continue to be credited to your account. Focus on your son and come back when he recovers." He completely detached the employee's salary from his labor, transforming a standard transactional paycheck into a pure lifeline of compassion. Let's fast forward a bit. Weeks go by. We move from that sudden, devastating resignation request into a prolonged period of total uncertainty for the family. And then, an amazing, incredibly emotional moment happens. 2 months later, the employee returns to the office. But this time, it's tears of joy. He walks through the doors carrying a box of sweets, announcing to everyone that, miraculously, his son has completely recovered. You'd think the story ends there, right? Nope. Upon returning to work the very next day, this insanely loyal accountant makes a surprising request that completely shocks management. He says, "Please deduct the salary you paid me. I wasn't working and I don't feel right keeping it." I mean, wow. That speaks volumes about the employee's profound integrity. He felt he had broken the fundamental contract of employment, a day's pay for a day's work, and his conscience simply wouldn't let him pocket the money. What happens next reveals a really fascinating clash of perspectives. On one hand, you have the employee's view, which was strictly traditional. These were unearned wages that rightfully belonged to the company and absolutely had to be refunded. But Pandey's response? It was absolute. He adamantly refused to view the money as a transaction for labor, stating plainly, that wasn't a salary. That was our small contribution toward your son's recovery. Pandey actually shared a concluding thought later that perfectly captures the emotionally resonant core of this whole event. He said, sometimes a company is not just a workplace. Sometimes it's a family. It completely challenges our ingrained, kind of cynical view of corporate life. It serves as this beautiful reminder that businesses are, at the end of the day, made up of human beings. And when those human beings choose empathy over policy, truly incredible things happen. Now, just for the sake of transparency in this explainer, it's worth noting a quick caveat. While this story exploded across X and various news platforms, the specific names of the accountant and the wider company have remained undisclosed, so the exact details operate almost like a modern corporate parable. But honestly, whether you view it as a literal documentary of events or a powerful illustration of ideal leadership, its impact on the public is absolutely undeniable. And the internet's reaction? Immediate and overwhelming. People absolutely flooded the comments with admiration, praising the selfless act that allowed a father to just be present when he was needed most. It sparked massive, widespread discussions about true corporate leadership, proving that, as one user so powerfully put it, kindness at work becomes strength in life. It clearly struck a chord, because it's exactly the kind of grace we all hope we'd receive in our own darkest hours. Which brings us to the ultimate takeaway. Take a look at the culture around you. Is your company just a workplace, bound strictly by hours logged and outputs delivered? Or does it operate with the compassion of a family when the chips are really down? Think about what your boss would do in a crisis like this. What does true loyalty, both from an employee and to an employee, really look like in your own professional life?